What is up, guys? Last time you said you wanted these for every patch, so we're going to go over the best picks in each role for 6.6. Remember as well, we're kind of in the middle of a meta shift at the moment, so a lot is starting to change right now. I also haven't done top 5s for the roles for about a month, so if you want them as well, then like this if you did, dislike it if you didn't, let me know your best picks in the comments, but let's get started. Just to mix it up a little bit, we're actually going to start in the top lane this time. Now, if you watch my PvE video for this patch, you'll know I talked a lot about Poppy, not because she was getting a buff or anything, but because the others around her were getting nerfed. With the Nautilus and Fiora nerfs, it's really opened up Poppy to take that top spot. The key things here are how good she is in lane. She builds tanky, she is crowd control, plus really good damage, and in my opinion is one of the best carry laners who also builds tanky. Pure carry laners are kind of falling out of favor a little bit now as we see more and more tanks rise up and they just can't kill them, but Poppy is one of the few who can kill these tanks while keeping up with the defense they build. Poppy as a champion snowballs harder than most, honestly, can easily dive once she gets ahead because she's building tanky, doesn't even need to build damage to do damage, and in team fights is just great. The runner-up spot for top lane is for Graves. For a long time I kind of ignored this guy, assuming Riot would nerf him and move him back into the bot lane, but that isn't happening anymore. In fact, the changes on the PvE, they're leaning even more towards burst tanky Graves. He is one of the few champions who can really get through these pure tanks and also survive carry laners, the best of both worlds, I guess, just like Poppy. This new playstyle that's come up is kind of overpowered, well, it's really strong at the moment. This heavy lifesteal, getting a Warlord's Keystone, rushing Death's Dance gives you an absolute ton of healing with how your shotgun bullets work. Then people are getting a Phantom Dancer to reduce the enemy's damage to you, more Hysterics to give you shields to stay alive, and suddenly you have loads of damage and you just don't die. It makes him so hard to deal with in lane and in team fights. He's hard to focus because of all this defense and stuff with him, but he does so much damage if you leave him alone. Let's move on to the opposite side of the map, onto AD carries. The meta is shifting more into mid to late game champions now. Assassins are leaving a little bit and tanks are coming back in. Nobody is a better tank killer than kog'maw. He's in a strong spot anyway, and remember, Riot nerfed him in the lane phase so he could be punished in lane. With less aggressive supports and AD carries now, it's like, how do you actually punish him in lane? Everything's a bit more passive, so he's back to being insanely strong. If he can actually survive the lane phase, then he's still just as strong, if not stronger late game after the changes. He just sits there, right clicks, and off he goes. Pair him up with a Braum or Soraka, who are both very strong this patch too, and you have a reasonable lane, you can survive it, and you have an insane mid to late game when you get there. AD carries do struggle with this whole thing of like, if my team feeds, there isn't much to do, but this is one pick where even if your team feeds, one good team fight and you can pull the game back. A very similar idea actually for our runner-up one. I'm going to give it to Sivir, but Jhin could also be here. If this video was just for Diamond Plus, I probably would have picked Jhin. He is insane. Right now he does a ton of damage, but he doesn't have much mobility and he can get shut down. Sivir, on the other hand, is not about the lane phase. It takes all of the pressure off of you because you just have to survive, a lot like kog'maw. I know that does sound really weird, okay, but Sivir in a fight actually isn't very good at all. She can push, sure, and poke, I guess, with a W a bit, but you aren't designed to all in and win lane. Right now her strength is in team fights. That is why you pick her. That AoE damage that she can do with her W and Q, and obviously her ultimate for engaging and picking fights. It's really dumb, but I've been pretty much out damaging everyone even when behind, and I've come back to win so many games with Sivir. Let's go on to the jungle next. I know she did get a bit of a nerf this patch, but I did say at the time I didn't think it was huge, and she's still the best jungler in my opinion. We have two very different playstyles in the jungle at the moment. These kind of pure carries like Kindred or Graves really, or tanks like a Mumu or Gragas. Shyvana is really in the middle, best of both worlds I guess, and that's why she's so good right now. She builds tanky after the first few items, so she's hard to kill, but she does a lot of damage, especially once she gets sated. Even with the kind of like Titanic Hydra nerf, everyone's still building it and doing pretty well too. Nothing has actually changed that much for her this patch. I don't think she's like quite as strong as she was before. You have to be a little bit more careful early into the game, but she's still a powerhouse. Still farms really well, ganks are okay, and has a ridiculous mid to late game, which is what the meta is shifting to. Well, I did say we're moving back to the tank meta a little bit, right? And who's a better tank than Volibear? Well, nobody is really. Amumu was kind of good at that too, but I've mentioned him a lot recently, so both could be here, but we're going to stick with Volley this time round. That passive is insane, and he does damage without needing to build it, so he's tanky early earlier into the game than most. This is a big thing that I usually don't talk about actually. You have this advantage mid-game where you're too tanky to kill, where everyone is still building up their damage, but you already have that defense to survive. It may not seem like a huge thing because you aren't directly killing them. Well, even actually you probably are directly killing them because of how much damage this guy does. Your damage isn't really obvious, and it's not obvious how much absorbing damage helps to win a fight, but trust me, you last longer than most, and your girlfriend probably agrees lasting longer is definitely a good thing. So, good clear, good ganks, very tanky, good damage, and a well-rounded champion right now. Okay, so everyone always bitches at me for putting support last, so here you go, second from last today. Soraka is so overpowered right now. Not joking, you should probably honestly ban her right now. She is very high impact, hard to play against, but very easy at the same time. Like, you barely have to try and you'll do so much work in the game. You keep bad teammates alive, you let a bad AD carry farm and survive, and all you have to do is hit that Q sometimes and not die. Lane phase is really hard to play against a Soraka. You'll outheal all of their damage, and unless you put yourself in a bad spot and die, you won't really have any trouble. Team fights, they actually kind of need to focus you if they want to stop you healing, but that's hard because you'll survive long enough and absorb enough cooldowns that your team will win the fight. She has a win rate typical of like a Zed or an Udyr when they were at the top. Now that is so rare for a support to have that much impact in a game and hold that kind of win rate. That is when you know it's way overboard. So Janna did get nerfed this patch, but is still really good at what she does, keeping people alive. Her lane phase is worse than Soraka because she can't just endlessly help her AD carry. She doesn't really do much in lane, I guess, but in team fights she does a lot. Especially now that we're moving more towards like mid to late game carries, Janna becomes even better. So kind of like Janna is keeping an Ezreal alive doing 200 damage a second, right? It's better if she keeps a like kog'maw alive doing 500 damage a second. Janna's job for both Ezreal and kog'maw stays the same. It's like you're still using your abilities in the same way, but the effect of it is better. I honestly pulled that example out of my head. I didn't write that one down, so that might make no sense, but I think that shows why Janna is better paired with higher damage champions. We're going to go to the mid lane to end this video. Zed is pretty much the sole survivor of the assassin meta, and this is probably the last patch that we're going to see him at the top. With the Lux nerf that hit this patch, that by the way hit way harder than anyone thought. Like, I thought that was kind of a buff on paper, but playing her it feels so clunky early. Anyway, so Lux is out of the way now, and that has made room for Zed. Zed is all about how good you are with the champion. If you are bad with him, then you won't do much, but if you're good with him, then you'll do so much work. You can win lane, you can snowball the rest of the map by roaming and catching people constantly before everyone starts to ramp up, and that is the big thing. He does so much damage even with only a few items, so you hit your power spike while everyone else is still powering up and you can just basically kill everyone. The meta is kind of shifting away from him right now, but I still think he does too much damage at the moment and is so hard to deal with. Runner-up spot is actually Malzahar. I'm so happy to put this guy here. Like, he's been on my underrated videos for months, and finally people have started to play him more. He didn't do great against assassins because of his low mobility, but he can deal with and shred tanks like a monster. Liandry's is semi-core on him and does percentage health damage. He has an AoE silence, lockdown, and just a lot of damage anyway. He's good in lane with his pushing, easy to gank for with his ultimate, and builds a fair amount of health, which also makes him harder to kill. The more passive the meta gets, the better he's going to be, really. Well, the less punished he gets for having no mobility, and that is his biggest problem. I don't really think he'll be at the top for too long, but while people aren't used to playing against him, he's really strong. Strong anyway, honestly, but made stronger by how hard he is to play against, and nobody really has an idea yet. So that wraps up patch 6.6 best champions for each role in my opinion. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and for now, I'm going to leave you with the robots.